My beloved brothers and sisters, sometimes you raise your hands to the skies and nothing seems to happen. Days pass, weeks pass, maybe even years, and your dua remains unanswered. You start to wonder, has Allah forgotten me? But I want to tell you today, He hasn't. And the silence you're hearing is not rejection. It may just be the softest form of His mercy. Let us remind ourselves that even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam waited. And if delay was written for the most beloved of all creation, then maybe, just maybe, the delay in your life is a sign of how deeply Allah is still writing your story with love. When it's delayed, it's being perfected. My beloved brothers and sisters, sometimes we feel like we've done everything right. We've been making dua with sincerity. We've cried in the middle of the night. We've raised our hands after every salah, and still the thing we asked for doesn't arrive. Days pass, weeks pass, years even, and there's this voice inside that whispers, maybe Allah doesn't want this for me. Maybe I'm not worthy. But I want you to pause and remember this very carefully. A delay from Allah is not a rejection. It is not abandonment. It is not divine silence. It is divine perfection. You may think you're ready, but Allah, the one who created you, who sees your past, your future, the turns you'll take, the people you'll meet, the challenges waiting in your path. He knows what you're truly ready for. Sometimes you ask Allah for something good, marriage, children, a job, healing, peace. You ask for something your heart aches for. But what if Allah knows that the version of you right now might mishandle that blessing? What if the very thing you're begging for, I would have caused you more pain than peace? If it arrived too soon, imagine giving a small child a key to a car. They want it. They're begging for it. But would you hand it over? No. Because they haven't learned how to use it safely. Because they might hurt themselves or others. The delay is protection, not denial. Allah sees that you still need time. Time to mature. Time to heal. Time to fix what's broken in your heart, so that the blessing doesn't land on unstable ground. And sometimes it's not you who needs time, it's the blessing itself. Maybe the person you're asking for isn't ready. Maybe the job you want is still being prepared. Maybe the life you're asking for is still under construction and the door is closed. Because if you entered now, you'd fall through the floor. My brother, my sister, we live in a world of instant everything. Fast food, fast messages, fast answers. But Allah does not operate on speed. He operates on wisdom. He doesn't just give you something. He gives it at the right moment, in the right way, with the right heart and the right surroundings, so that when it comes, you don't lose Him because of it. You don't forget your prayers. You don't lose your humility. You don't place the blessing above the one who gave it. That's the danger of gifts that come too soon. They can become a fitna. They can become a distraction. They can even become the reason someone walks away from Allah. So He delays it out of mercy. He delays it until He knows that you've detached from making that dua your obsession and returned to making Allah your comfort. Until your heart says, Ya Allah, if you give it, I will thank you. And if you don't, I will still thank you. Because that is the heart that is truly ready, not just for the blessing, but for what comes after. And maybe, just maybe, what you're asking for is not going to arrive in this dunya. Maybe Allah is saving it for Jannah, for the day. He welcomes you with joy and says, remember all those silent nights you cried and waited and believed? Here is your answer, multiplied beyond what you imagined. Don't let the delay make you think you're not loved. In fact, the delay may be the very proof that you are deeply loved, because Allah delays for the ones He's preparing. He delays for the ones He wants to protect. He delays for the ones He wants to elevate. And the best things in life never arrive rushed. They arrive when your hands are still raised, your heart is still soft, and your faith says, even if it takes forever, Ya Rab, I'll still ask only you. That is a believer. That is you. And that is why Allah hasn't forgotten your dua. He's perfecting it. And He's perfecting you. If you got it earlier, you might have ruined it. One of the hardest truths to accept is that sometimes the thing we are praying for is actually too early for us. Not because we are bad, not because we are unworthy, but because we're not ready for what it really means to carry that blessing. You may be asking Allah for something beautiful, a spouse, a child, a job, a second chance, a solution to a pain that no one even knows you carry. But if Allah gave it to you right now, with the mindset you currently have, with the wounds you haven't healed, with the ego you haven't broken, with the habits you haven't fixed, you may mishandle the blessing. You may lose it, or worse, you may use that very gift to drift further away from the one who gave it to you. And Allah loves you too much to let your own dua become the reason for your destruction. You see, we only think about what we want, but Allah thinks about what will protect your iman. He thinks about your akhirah. He thinks about what will still bring you back to Him, even when the blessing becomes a test. And sometimes, my beloved, that means He has to say, not yet. You're not ready. If I give it now, you'll break under the weight of it. Think about it this way. You're building a house, but the foundation is still soft. And now, you're asking Allah to give you a massive gift, like a luxury car, to park on that foundation. It looks like a blessing, but if it arrives too early, it will collapse the ground beneath you. That's not a gift. That's a setup for heartbreak. So Allah waits. He holds the thing you've been crying for, not because He's cruel, but because He's merciful beyond measure. He knows there's a version of you coming, a stronger you, a wiser you, a you that knows how to guard a blessing instead of losing it. But to become that version of yourself, you may have to go through more tests, more healing, more silence, more surrender. You may have to be alone for a while. You may have to be misunderstood. You may have to feel like everyone else is getting ahead while you're still stuck in the same place. But you're not stuck. You're in divine training. And this is something we don't realize, that the delay isn't always about the thing. The delay is about Allah rewriting your insides. So when the thing arrives, you'll know how to keep it and love it, honor it, and never let it take you away from Him. Because there are people who got married at the wrong time and their marriage became misery. There are people who became successful at the wrong time and their success became arrogance. There are people who got what they asked for but lost who they were in the process. So Allah in His mercy is not just thinking about the arrival of your dua. He's thinking about how it will affect your soul. And that is far more important. My beloved, you're not being punished. You're being prepared. Prepared to receive something in a way that doesn't harm you, doesn't ruin you, and doesn't disconnect you from your deen. That takes time. It takes surrender. It takes letting go of your own schedule and trusting the schedule of the one who sees the whole map. And I know it's not easy. You cry at night. You wonder, everyone else has what I'm asking for. Why not me? You look around and feel like you've been forgotten. But I promise you, you haven't. You're not forgotten. You're not rejected. You're loved too deeply to be given something at the wrong time. Because if Allah gives it too early, you'll connect your heart to the gift, not the giver. And then when the gift shakes, you'll shake with it. So He delays. So you learn to love Him first. So your foundation becomes unshakable. So when the blessing comes, it rests on a heart that is rooted in tawakkul, not desperation. And when that happens, you'll see the wisdom. You'll look back and say, Ya Allah, thank you for not giving it to me when I begged for it. Thank you for waiting until I became someone who could carry this with gratitude, not entitlement. Because the truth is, on the right blessing at the wrong time can become a curse. But the right blessing at the right time from Allah is a gift that uplifts you both in this life and the next. So don't rush the process. You are not being ignored. You are being refined. And the dua you're making is not just reaching the heavens. It's building a version of you that's ready to live the answer without losing Allah in the process. That's not a delay. That's love. That's mercy. That's Allah. And He always gives at the moment that's best for you. The wait is where your faith is built. My dear brothers and sisters, let me speak to the one whose heart is quietly breaking. To the one who says, I've been making dua for so long, but nothing has changed. To the one who feels like they're standing in front of a closed door, knocking, pleading, but hearing no response. Let me remind you, with all the love in my heart, the wait is not empty. The wait is not wasted. The wait is not punishment. The wait is where your faith is being built. You see, anyone can raise their hands and make dua when they feel strong, when they feel hopeful, when life is moving the way they expect. That kind of dua, it's easy. But what about when it doesn't go your way? What about when you're met with silence? What about when your heart is tired? Your eyes are swollen from crying and your soul is whispering, Ya Allah, are you still listening? That is the moment where real belief is born. That is the moment when your connection to Allah either breaks or becomes unshakable. It's in those quiet, lonely nights when nothing makes sense that Allah is building something inside you that you can't yet see. The wait is not for the answer. The wait is for the transformation that happens while you're waiting. Because Allah isn't just answering your dua, He's answering your soul. He's drawing you closer. He's shaping your heart to depend on Him in ways you never would have otherwise. Sometimes you think you're just asking for a solution, but Allah is actually giving you a new relationship with Him. A closeness, a reliance, a bond that can only be built in the furnace of silence and patience. My dear brother, my dear sister, when you feel like you've been left unseen by the heavens, you haven't. Allah says in the Quran, indeed, I respond to the call of the caller when he calls upon me. 186. He didn't say, I respond immediately. He didn't say, I respond in the way you expect. He said, I respond. And that is a promise from the one who never breaks his word. But the real question is, can you keep calling Even when it's hard, can you keep knocking? Even when the door seems closed, can you keep believing even when nothing is visible? That's what faith is. Faith is not proven when the dua is answered. Faith is proven when the dua is unanswered and you still say, Ya Allah, I trust you anyway. Sometimes Allah withholds the result so that you'll come back to Him every single day. You'll raise your hands not just once but again and again and again until your dua is no longer about the thing you want but about the one you're turning to. And that is where transformation happens. You become softer. You begin praying not just with your tongue but with your tears. You start remembering Allah when things go wrong, and slowly you also begin remembering Him when things go right. The weight teaches you humility. It removes your ego. It quiets your impatience. It forces you to slow down and ask yourself, am I chasing the gift or the giver? So don't rush it. Don't say, why hasn't He answered me? Say instead, how is He changing me in this weight? What version of me is He building? Because the person who first made that dua will not be the same person who eventually receives it. And that's the point. Allah isn't just giving you what you asked for. He's giving you the strength, the wisdom, and the spiritual maturity to carry the answer without losing yourself. And that takes time. It may take heartbreak. It may take stillness. It may take a long season of nothing. But behind the nothing is everything. Because that version of you who refuses to give up on Allah, even when you don't see results, that version of you is rare and Allah loves it. He loves the sound of your dua. He loves the sincerity that comes when you're tired but still hopeful. He loves that even when you're hurting, you're still facing Him. So if you feel like giving up today, don't, because your wait is sacred. Your patience is being recorded. Your heartbreak is being seen. Your tears are not falling in vain. Each moment you keep believing is like planting a seed in the soil of Allah's mercy. And one day, when the time is perfect, when you least expect it, that seed will grow. And when it blooms, you'll realize it wasn't the thing you were waiting for that mattered most. It was the version of you that was built in the waiting. That's the real answer to your dua. That's the gift Allah was preparing all along. A heart that trusts, a soul that surrenders, a believer that says, even if it hurts, I will never stop asking my Rabb, because that's who you are. And that's why you're still standing. So keep going. Keep making that dua. Keep waiting, not with bitterness, but with faith. Because even in the silence, Allah is working. He's working on the answer. And He's working on you. And both are worth the wait. The pain is preparing you for a deeper connection. My beloved brothers and sisters, let's be honest for a moment. Pain changes us. It humbles us. It shakes us. It breaks parts of us we thought were unbreakable. But here's the truth we often forget. Pain is not always a punishment. Sometimes pain is a summon, a quiet, divine invitation to reconnect with the one who never left. You may not realize it right now, but the ache in your chest, the heaviness in your heart, the dua that's still unanswered is not just a test, it's a bridge. It's leading you to a connection that can only be found when everything else falls apart. Because sometimes, and we don't turn to Allah until we've run out of every other option. We try to fix things ourselves. We try to carry it all alone. We try to smile through the storm until one day we just collapse. And in that collapse, in that moment of complete surrender, you finally whisper, Ya Allah, I can't do this anymore. Only you can. That moment is sacred. That moment is powerful. That moment is why Allah sometimes lets the pain stay just a little longer, not to torture you, but to transform you. Because there are parts of your soul that can only be awakened by pain. There are levels of dua that only come when you're on the floor, broken, exhausted, with tears soaking your prayer mats, saying nothing but help me. And there is a closeness to Allah that only comes when everything else is removed. You might think you're falling apart, but in the unseen, you're being brought closer, you're being rewired, you're being cleansed, you're being reintroduced to the version of you that Allah always saw, but you forgot. Because when life is easy, we become distracted, we forget, we delay our prayers, we skip our Quran, we chase people who don't care for our hearts. But pain brings silence, and in that silence, we begin to hear Allah again. My beloved, some of your most sincere du'as will be made in the middle of heartbreak. Some of your most powerful sujood will come when you feel like you're losing everything. Some of your strongest connection to Allah will be built through the very pain you begged Him to remove. That is not a coincidence. That is mercy in disguise. Sometimes what you call suffering is actually spiritual realignment, because the pain clears out the noise. It removes the people who were never meant to stay. It breaks the attachments that were draining your soul, and it softens your heart until all that remains is a servant and their Lord. And in that moment, when there's no one else to call, when no one truly understands what you're feeling, when your voice trembles from crying so much, that is where Allah is closest. He says in the Quran, I am near. I respond to the call of the caller when he calls upon me. 186. Not the perfect caller, not the scholar, not the one with eloquent words, just the one who calls. Even if all you say is, Ya Allah, even if your dua is silent, buried in your chest, wrapped in fear, covered in tears, He hears it. He hears you. And sometimes Allah breaks you open only so He can fill you with what you truly need. Not just relief, not just a solution, but a connection to Him that cannot be shaken by this world. Because a pain that brings you closer to Allah is better than a pleasure that makes you forget Him. So if you're in pain right now, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Talk to Allah inside it. Ask Him what He's teaching you through it. You'll find that what you thought was the storm was actually the wind pushing your soul back home. The very thing that hurt you is the very thing that's leading you to Him. And isn't that what we needed all along? A closeness so deep that even when life hurts, you still smile knowing your Rabb is near. A connection so real that even when your heart breaks, your faith doesn't. Because pain has a purpose. And Allah never wounds the heart of a believer except to heal it in a better way. So, my brother, my sister, don't be ashamed of your pain. It's part of your story. A necessary chapter in your spiritual rise. A quiet whisper from Allah saying, come closer to me. Let me hold what the world dropped. Let me be the peace they couldn't give you. And once you've tasted that peace, you'll realize it was never about getting what you wanted. It was always about meeting the one you needed. That's what the pain was for. That's what the delay was for. That's why He let you fall apart, so that you could finally fall into Him. Even the Prophet ﷺ was told to wait. My beloved brothers and sisters, sometimes the waiting gets so heavy, you start asking questions you never thought you would. Why is Allah not helping me? Why is everyone moving forward while I'm stuck? Why is my dua not being answered? Even though I'm praying with all my heart, and it's in those quiet, painful questions that we forget one of the most beautiful, comforting truths in our deen. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, the most beloved, the most sincere, the most pious, the most pure, was told to wait. Yes, even he sallam, who had the highest level of tawakkul, even he who cried to Allah in the darkness of the night, even he who was chosen for the greatest mission on earth, was made to wait, not once, not twice, but over and over again throughout his mission. He waited for revelation. He waited for victory. He waited for answers. He waited for the hearts of people to open. He waited in the cave. He waited in Taif bleeding. He waited in the cave of Thor, surrounded by enemies. He waited in Medina with his heart still longing for Makkah. This is not a man unfamiliar with divine silence. And yet, not once did he say, Allah has abandoned me. Yes, the people said it. Yes, the whispers tried to creep in. Even in Surah Ad-Duha, Allah had to reassure him, your Lord has not forsaken you, nor is He displeased. 93:3. Why? Because silence can feel like distance. Delay can feel like rejection. But Allah was showing him and us that divine love is not measured by speed. Sometimes, the greater your purpose, the longer the wait. Because what's being prepared for you is not ordinary. My beloved, if the Prophet ﷺ had to wait, and he was the most beloved to Allah, then why do we assume that waiting is a sign of weakness? It's not. It's a sign of refinement, a sign of nearness, a sign that something bigger is being orchestrated in the unseen. Let me take you back for a moment. When the Prophet ﷺ lost Khadija radiallahu anha, the love of his life, his companion, his support, his anchor, he was heartbroken. And during that time, what else happened? Revelation paused. There was silence from the heavens. Can you imagine? He's grieving. He's alone. And now, even Jibreel doesn't descend. And yet, Allah knew. He knew that the Prophet's heart was being softened in the fire of pain. He knew that this silence wasn't cruelty. It was a preparation for something far greater. Because sometimes, before the most beautiful rise, you must first walk through the deepest stillness. And what came after that? After the pain, after the silence? Surah Ad-Duha, a surah so full of light, so full of comfort, so full of hope, that to this day, we recite it when we feel abandoned, and your Lord will give you and you will be satisfied. 93:5. Not maybe, not possibly, but He will, just like He did for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were also battles that the Prophet sallam had to wait through. Think about Badr, where the Muslims were outnumbered, underarmed, and trembling. They made dua. They begged. The Prophet ﷺ raised his arms so high in dua, his shawl fell off. Did victory come immediately? No. Not until the very last moment, when the hearts had fully surrendered, when hope was placed in Allah alone, and when the Muslims knew No one can save us now except our Rabb. That's when the angels descended. That's when the tide turned. That's when the unseen became visible. Because sometimes, my dear listener, Allah waits until you truly let go, so He can show you what it means to be held. And then there was Hudaybiyah, a treaty that on the surface looked like loss. The companions were heartbroken. They didn't understand. They thought they were finally going to enter Makkah. They thought victory was close. But what did Allah call that painful moment? Indeed, we have given you a clear victory. 48. 1. Victory? Yes. Because the delay wasn't a denial. It was a setup. It was the calm before Fath Makkah. It was the silence before the floodgates open. That's how Allah works. He delays not to disappoint, but to deliver in a way that exceeds imagination. So, if you're in a phase right now where nothing is happening, where your dua is unanswered, where you feel like your efforts are going nowhere, just remember, even the Prophet ﷺ was told to wait, and he was the most beloved. So what makes us think that waiting means we're forgotten? Sometimes waiting is the greatest sign that you're being watched over, that something extraordinary is coming, but it's being protected from arriving too early. Allah delayed for His Prophet ﷺ so that we could learn that delays are not punishments. They are proof that the plan is divine. So hold on, my brother. Be patient, my sister. The delay you're in, you're not the first to go through it. And you're not alone in it. Even the one who split the moon was once made to wait under a dark sky. And even then, he never stopped believing. So neither should you. Your dua is changing you before it changes your life. I want you to think about something you may have never noticed before. Something you might have missed in all the waiting, in all the tears. That dua you've been making over and over again, day and night. In sujood and silence, it has been changing you. Even if your situation hasn't shifted, even if your reality looks exactly the same, you're not the same. Not on the inside, and that is no small thing. You see, we often assume that the purpose of dua is to get what we asked for. But in truth, sometimes the bigger miracle is how it softens your hearts, how it brings you back to Allah, how it turns your pain into prayer and your loneliness into a secret bond with your Creator. Dua is not just about results, it's about returning. And if it brought you back to Him, then it's already working. You may have started your dua begging for something you thought you needed. A job, a person, healing, direction, closure. But along the way, you found patience. You found humility. You found tawakkul. You found the kind of reliance that only comes when everything else has failed you. That's not failure. That's spiritual growth. Before your life ever changes, your soul does. Before your circumstances align, your heart does. Before Allah moves the world around you, He rewires the world within you. Because sometimes your dua is not changing your situation because it's still busy rewriting who you are. You become quieter in your anger. You learn to let go of control. You realize you've stopped chasing what was never meant to be yours. You start praying with depth, not just habit. You stop comparing. You stop begging people to understand you, because now you know only Allah truly sees. That kind of internal change is not always visible, but it is always sacred, and it never goes unnoticed by Allah. You may be crying saying, Ya Allah, I don't feel any different. But Allah sees what you don't. He sees the pride that's slowly melting from your voice. He sees the ego that's being replaced with surrender. He sees the desperation turning into devotion. He sees the one who used to rush salah, now staying longer in sujood. Not because they're forced, but because that's where the heart finally rests. That's what dua does. It transforms your relationship with Him from transactional to intimate, from momentary to constant. You begin to speak to Him even outside of dua. You start involving Him in your thoughts, your choices, your fears, your dreams. Suddenly, Allah isn't just the one you call in emergency. He becomes the one you walk with, the one you speak to, the one you trust, even when nothing makes sense. And that shift in the soul can only come through dua that doesn't get answered immediately. Because when the answer is delayed, you have to sit in the unknown. And in that unknown, you discover faith. Real faith. Unshakable faith. The kind that's built without guarantees. The kind that says, even if I never get what I'm asking for, I will still love you, Ya Allah. That's a soul that has matured. That's a believer that's been forged in silence. And that's why Allah allows the delay. Because if He gave you the thing right away, you might not have grown into the person who could keep it. You might have taken it and forgotten Him. You might have used it to build your dunya, but at the cost of your akhirah. So instead, He works on you first, so that when the gift comes, you don't worship the gift. You remember the giver. My beloved, you are not the same person you were when you first made that dua. You may not see it, but the angels who recorded your desperation also recorded your growth. They saw how you stayed patient, how you chose sabr instead of sin, how you bit your tongue when you could have complained, how you still raised your hands, even with a trembling heart. That's not weakness. That's proof that you're being purified. And when Allah is changing you, it means something is coming that requires the new you to receive it. Sometimes your life hasn't changed yet, because the old you would have wasted the blessing. So Allah continues to sculpt you in private until the version of you that finally receives the gift is the one who says, Ya Allah, I understand now. It was never about the answer. It was about becoming the person who knew how to carry it. And you will carry it, insha'Allah, when the time is right, when the heart is right, when the dua has not just left your lips, but rewired your soul. So don't underestimate what's happening inside you. The shifts, the reflections, the surrender, the faith. Dua is not just about changing your situation. It's about changing your position with Allah. And sometimes that change alone is worth more than what you asked for. So keep going, keep whispering, keep crying, because your life might look the same, but you're not the same. And that is where the real miracle begins. Shaitan wants you to quit right before the door opens. There's something you need to know. Something Shaitan never wants you to realize. It's that the moment you feel like giving up is often the moment you're the closest to the door opening. You've been making dua, you've been crying, you've been holding on barely. And now, when you're exhausted, when you're wondering if any of it even matters anymore, that's when Shaitan comes the strongest. Not in the beginning, not when you were full of hope, but right before Allah gives you what you've been praying for, because He knows He can't stop Allah's mercy. He can't block your risk. He can't interfere with the qadr that's written. But what He can do is convince you to walk away just before it arrives. And He does it with whispers, soft ones, subtle ones, the kind that sound like your own thoughts. Maybe Allah doesn't want this for me. I've made dua for so long. What's the point now? Nothing's changing. I think I should just stop. But let me ask you something. If nothing is going to change, why is Shaitan fighting so hard to make you quit? Why is he attacking you with doubts now? After all this time? Because he knows what you don't. He sees what's about to unfold for you and he fears it. He fears the believer who keeps making dua with a broken heart. He fears the soul who refuses to give up on Allah even when everything around them says it's over. Because that kind of believer is unstoppable. That kind of believer is carrying the kind of sincerity that shakes the heavens. My brother, my sister, sometimes the greatest victories happen just after the moment of doubt. It's like the last stretch of a marathon. Your legs are shaking, your heart is racing, and everything inside you is screaming, just give up. But the finish line is right around the corner. And the ones who reach it aren't always the fastest. They're just the ones who didn't quit. Even if they were crawling, even if they were crying. And it's the same with your dua. The mercy you've been begging for might already be on its way. But Shaitan wants you to disconnect from Allah before it arrives. So he whispers things like, Allah isn't listening. Other people got it, you won't. You're not righteous enough. You've made too many mistakes. All lies, all distractions, all meant to make you give up before the breakthrough. But you're smarter than that. You're stronger than that. You've come too far to stop now. Remember, even Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam cried for years. He lost his eyesight from the grief. But did he stop hoping? No. He said, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, no one despairs of Allah's mercy except the disbelieving people. Quran 12:87. He never gave up. And what happened? Yusuf alayhi salam returned. A family was restored. A heart was healed. Because hope was never lost. And if Allah can return Yusuf to Yaqub after years of separation, if he can bring a child out of a well and into royalty, if he can heal a father who cried every night for what was lost, then what makes you think he won't take care of you? You're not being ignored. You're being tested. You're being refined. You're being watched by the angels who write down every whispered dua you've ever made in the dark. And when the time is right, when the soul is ready, when your heart has been softened enough to hold the gift with humility, that's when the door will open. Not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. But Shaitan doesn't want you to reach that moment. So he intensifies the whispers right before it happens.